Hey class, we are going to start our topic 10 ecology notes. Make sure you have your note packet in front of you. You're going to fill it in like we normally would in class. You're just going to do it listening to this ed puzzle. So let's begin. You're going to start by answering these pre-lesson questions. And what I want you to do is I want you to pause the video and answer these first. And then you can go ahead and click play and then finish the notes up until, I think it's slide 20. So go ahead and click pause. All right, so now that you've done your pre-lesson questions, let's get into talking about ecology. So a person who studies the environment is called an ecologist. Ecology is the study of interactions among living things and between living things and their surroundings. There's different levels of organization in an ecosystem or in ecology. You can study things at the organism level where you're looking at just one individual type of organism. We can look at populations, communities, ecosystems, and then the biome is like the largest, the biome is the most encompassing, I guess you would say. It's a whole regional area that could be studied. So on this page, we're going to be doing those definitions. An organism is an individual living thing, such as an alligator. Population is a group of the same species that live in one area. And a community is a group of different species that live together in one area. They have to be able to interact to be considered part of that community. And then an ecosystem is going to include all of the organisms as well as any non-living things in that ecosystem. So climate, the soil, the water, the rocks, the temperature, the amount of humidity, ice, anything else that's not living in that particular area is part of the ecosystem. And then the biome is a major regional or global community of organisms, and it's going to be characterized by the climate and the plant community there. So the climate is the temperature and the precipitation. And then based on the temperature and precipitation amounts will dictate what kind of plants can actually live in that area. So ecosystems have both biotic and abiotic factors. Biotic factors are living things like plants, animals, fungi, bacteria. Those are all things that are alive, that interact and are part of an ecosystem. And then the abiotic factors are non-living aspects of an ecosystem, such as moisture, rain, snow, ice, the temperature, wind, sunlight, soil, even lightning could be considered an abiotic factor, rocks, sand, all those types of things. And changing one of those factors in an ecosystem will affect many other factors many times. And one of those, if you're changing the types of living things in an area, you could affect the biodiversity of that area. We're really going to be focused on maintaining biodiversity or having a large variety of living things in an ecosystem, because that way it can recover more easily from any type of disturbance. If you're limited to just a few organisms in an ecosystem, or there's not a lot of variety, then that ecosystem is in danger of collapsing if there's some sort of large change. So it's similar when we were talking about genetic diversity, and if there's a variety of traits in a population, they're more likely to survive an environmental change. The same thing with the variety of species in an area. They're more likely to survive a change as a whole, as an entire ecosystem. And that's what we want on our planet, is biodiversity. Rainforests typically have more biodiversity than any other location, but they are threatened by humans. We are cutting down rainforests at an exponential rate, and that's bad because we're losing a lot of species that way, and they're being overcrowded, or they're going extinct because of our activities. So that's something that we need to be aware of and be more conscious of, trying to preserve all parts of our planet. In an ecosystem, many times there's something called a keystone species, and these are interesting species because they have a really large effect on the entire ecosystem. And the analogy they use is like the picture of the arch that you see, a stone arch, and that center stone at the top is called the keystone. And if you pull that stone out of that arch, the whole thing collapses. And that's kind of how important a keystone species is in an ecosystem. If that species were to disappear, the entire ecosystem could collapse. So they're that important. So things like elephants and bears, shark in the ocean, little prairie dogs, and sea otters, beavers, hummingbirds. They all have a very large, important role in their ecosystem. You are going to watch an Ed puzzle at the end of these notes that is going to talk about keystone species and explain a couple examples and why they're so important. So don't forget to do that assignment. Here's another example, like with beavers and how they help maintain a complex web of life. So the beavers, they like to build beaver dams, which is a collection of stones and sticks and wood and grasses and things, and they live in there. But this also helps to slow down the flow of the river that they're in usually. It creates nesting sites for birds because of that. It creates higher fish population because they have more shelter, which also attracts more waterfowl, bird populations to that area. So there's a ripple effect based on this type of keystone species. Having more beavers in this area actually increases the diversity of the entire ecosystem. And then when we look at this top level of biodiversity, we have biomes. And biomes are, you can see how they're distributed across the world. The colder biomes are at the poles, north and south. And then you've got, tropical biomes near the equator or between the two tropics, usually, is the tropic lines. You're going to find more tropical areas. You can find desert areas there as well because there's sometimes not a lot of precipitation, but there's a lot of heat. But you can see the distribution on this particular map. We're going to talk about each biome individually. So there is such a thing as a marine biome too. There's a lot of biodiversity in the oceans, especially where there's a coral reef. Coral reefs provide a lot of niches and shelter and things for different species. But marine biomes have a lot of diversity, and that's something that we definitely want to take care of is our oceans. Tropical rainforests also have high biodiversity. They have lots of rain, lots of sunlight, it's always warm, so that allows for many plants and animals to survive there. The savanna usually has a dry and wet season. It's just got a mid-level of biodiversity. It is always warm, and they tend to have fires in the drier seasons, and lots of large herbivores live there to feed on the grasses that are available. We have deserts, which have a low biodiversity. They're very hot and dry in the daytime, very cold at night. There's not a lot of plants, so it only allows for small animals, maybe reptiles, insects, rodents, birds. Tiny things can live there and survive okay. The temperate grasslands, like in the Midwest US, there's a mid-level of biodiversity here. You're going to have dry and wet seasons, cold winters and hot summers, and there are, again, fires in the dry season, and once again, lots of large herbivores that can feed on the grasses. Here's our biome. We live in a temperate deciduous forest. There's a high biodiversity in this area. We have 4 seasons. It's pretty warm with rain in the summer, cold winters and snow in the winters. And we have deciduous trees. Those are the trees that change color and lose their leaves in the fall. We have lots of mammals, lots of insects, birds. There's quite a variety of species. So we want to definitely take care of our biome that we live in. Coniferous forest, or a taiga, sometimes they call it a boreal forest. They have a mid-level of biodiversity. You're going to see a lot of evergreens or pine trees. It tends to be drier and cooler. You do have mammals, birds, and insects that can live in these areas. The tundra is going to have low biodiversity. It's very cold all year. dry. There's not a lot of snow or precipitation. And they even have permafrost, which is there's certain areas where the ground is always frozen all the time. Only lichen and mosses can survive there. Small plants sometimes in the springtime, and you get migrating animals that can live there. Okay, you should have this page open in your notes. And for this activity in class, you should find these cards all at your tables. Each of you will pick just one of these. And what you're going to do is you're going to answer the question. I want you to list 3 abiotic factors in the biome that you selected and 3 biotic factors in the biome that you selected. So this one is like for the desert, this one temperate rainforest, this one is in the Arctic, polar region, we've got the chaparral, okay, grasslands, there's the rainforest, like a tropical rainforest, we have a boreal, or sometimes they call it a taiga or a coniferous forest, and then we also have the tundra. So you're picking one of those, and you're going to write down 3 biotic and 3 abiotic factors. Right on this page, I'd like you to write the title of the biome that you picked right at the top of your slide, and then you can write down the 3 biotic and abiotic, and make sure you label them so I know which ones they were. So now you'll be done with your notes. Now that your notes are done, you're going to go into Schoology and watch the 2 Edpuzzle videos I have in there. They're taking the place of the quiz, the barbecue quiz that you would have taken today. So it'll be a little bit easier on you that way.